March 25th, 2021. Hi, my name's Tom Yakopin. This is the Tom Yakopin Podcast, also known as Yakopinions. And I want to thank you for joining with us. Last week, we did a deep dive on the medical, hospital, medical, healthcare price transparency business and really had a fantastic response. I want to thank so many of you for digging in, watching that, and clearly a lot of people shared it because we got a lot of hits and I got a lot of very, very positive feedback. And I feel like that is very much in my wheelhouse. I'm going to be inviting a guest very soon, Adam Habig from Freedom HealthWorks, to continue that discussion. But along the same lines, inside of the scope of my profession, I thought that it would be prudent and perhaps a beneficial discussion to talk about retirement. You know, I'm turning 60, if you can believe it, in April. So I'm getting, I'm on the backside of the mountain, right? Trending towards retirement if I ever choose to retire. And I wanted to talk with you about some tips and techniques that I think may help you, those of you who are moving toward retirement, Social Security, what to do with a 401k, what are some prudent steps for asset management, things of that nature. And I think the time we spend together today will be very worthwhile. So retirement, everybody's opinion, everybody's understanding or idea about retirement is going to be a little different. So it is somewhat of a subjective conversation. So this isn't a one size fits all, approach to anything. But you have different opinions. I just saw the passing of a good friend and certainly a pillar in our community, Frank DeZomba, recently, who passed at age 93. Frank was in the insurance business 60-some years. In fact, we lease a building that was owned by Frank, the DeZomba DeLuca Insurance Agency. And frankly, even long after Frank sold his business, he never retired. He was the first one into the office, active in stock trading, and so the way Frank retired was different than the way perhaps Joe Blotz or somebody else might retire. Some people, want to travel, they're ready for adventure, they're going to start other businesses. I have a friend right now that's fixing to leave at a relatively early age, mid-50s, a major corporation with, full retirement, 401k, and he's literally looking at buying a business and doing something that he's dreamed about all of his life. That's his idea of retirement. Other people might be thinking about slowing down, smelling the roses, traveling. For some others, they may just want to sit on the front porch and rock, pet the kids, the cat, the dog, grandkids, whatnot. So everybody's going to be a little different. But there are certain things that I think are fundamental and principles for all of us. So one of them is, in all probability, if you've worked enough in the United States, you will have qualified for some type of benefit from Social Security. And I want to talk a little bit about understanding your options with Social Security. And the first three things that I think are very critical to understanding that is, when you go to the Social Security website, which if you haven't done yet and logged in, I highly recommend that you do. And you will see the slides that I'm looking at on your screen. Of course, you can go to www.ssa.gov/myaccount, which I've done, and create a username, password, login, and you will begin to understand options that are available to you. I'm going to summarize three of those options, three of them. Early retirement, which is considered by most 62, full retirement, which is 67, and then a delayed retirement, which is 70. And I have a lot of people who call the office, want to know about retirement planning, Medicare, 401k rollovers, whatever. They want to know or would like to get my opinion on this fundamental and perhaps first or second step to taking and moving toward your retirement years. And so what I wanted to point out to you is that I did this for a gentleman recently, and here's what I discovered. This particular gentleman that I'm working with now is 59. and he is looking at, planning a strategy. And so I said to him exactly what I said to you. Let's go to Social Security, log in, create your account, and let's take a look at what is available to you, or what will be available to you at what time, and perhaps what would be a prudent decision for you. And what you will see is this gentleman learned that at age 62, considered early retirement, if he pulls the trigger on Social Security at age 62, his benefit would be $1,857 monthly, or $22,284 in annual income. Okay, $1,857 a month. So, he could pull the trigger at 62 and off to the races, right? Traditionally, in the United States, 65 has been considered full retirement or normal retirement. Today, they've moved that back to 67, which the next thing that my client saw was that if he waits until full retirement at age 67, his Social Security benefits would increase from $1,857 a month to $2,814 a month. So a little delayed gratification. We're not talking about a long period of time. We're talking about 5 years. Instead of $22,284 a year, he's now $33,768 a year. It's a pretty big bump, right? It's like, job A or job B. Do I want this one, or do I want that one? But add to that if he were to delay his gratification to age 70, right? His monthly income from Social Security factually, and this is right from the website, based on his income, the amount of time that he's worked, what he's contributed, etc., his monthly income jumps to $3,600, $36.16 a month, or $43,392 a year. And again, that's an 8-year delay from 62 to age 70. So the question is, what is best for you, right? What would be a prudent decision? And number one, were you aware, right, that those options were available? Number two, were you aware at the significant impact of waiting to pull the trigger on Social Security? And of course, a question that I'm often asked, Tom, what is right for me? So I want to talk to you and want to pontificate for a minute about things that you may wish to consider. And these are factors that I recommend to anybody that waltzes into the office to talk with us about Medicare, which is probably another subject we ought to get into because it can be complicated. But here, as it relates retirement, income planning, etc., which option is best for you? So somewhere in that discussion, usually with friends, clients, potential customers, I say, first of all, I don't know. Okay. That's when I would like to have a crystal ball where I could look, into the future and tell you exactly, how long are you going to live? How are things going to go in the market, interest rates, governmentally, everything. And we don't have that. Okay. So in light of the fact that I'm not a prophet, that I don't have a crystal ball, and don't have all the facts, all that any of us can do is take a look at our choices and options and maybe look at some other factors that may help you or me or anybody making these decisions come to the best possible decision for their scenario. So some things that I would challenge you to consider is, one, consider your health history, your family longevity. We all, choices that we make, diet, exercise, drinking, smoking, things of that nature, all of these, to some degree, we all have some control over our own health. My family physician often says, Tom, remember, healthcare begins in the kitchen, right? And that's true. Choose the apple over the Snickers bar when possible. Choose the glass of purified water over the Coca-Cola when possible, right? Remember, it's a couple of glasses of wine, not a couple of bottles of wine, etc. So we all have some control over our health based on exercise, diet, proper mentality, things of that nature. But some things that none of us have control over is genetics. So I challenge people to really dig deep and look at, your mom or dad, your grandmother, your grandfather, etc. And I do think that family longevity, as best you can grasp it, your genetics, I think that's something to look at. Why? Because clearly, if you can put off pulling the trigger on Social Security and get $1,000 a month or more by delaying that, that could be a very prudent decision for you, especially if you live a longer than average life. But one of those factors that we're going to look at is average mortality for men and women in America. Why? Because again, as you'll see, that number significantly impacts a decision that an individual probably should make, right? So family history, I highly recommend you consider that. Another one is your personal goals. What do you want to do in your retirement years? Okay. For example, let's say that Joe Blotz can walk away from his job, or Sally Doe can walk away from her job at 62. And, and maybe they're willing to pull the trigger on Social Security at that time, even though it's a little less than it would be if they delayed it. But perhaps their goal is they have a side gig. They have a part-time job or a self-employment gig on the side, or maybe they want to be a Walmart greeter for the social interaction, and they have a little income, and so they're like, I would rather pull the trigger when the number's lower. I don't mind. I can make up the difference, or I have a company pension or other assets to make the difference. Or conversely, the same thing might be. An individual might say, I'm going to delay pulling the trigger on that because I have the side gig or other assets that I can rely on, so that I can wait to 67 or 70, pull the trigger then and get a more robust monthly pension or payout from Social Security. But you want to consider, what do you want to do? What does retirement look like for you? Here's another one. Do you have additional sources of income that may permit you to achieve your desired lifestyle and delay pulling the trigger on Social Security? Other sources of income could be that a company pension, could be, as I said, a side gig, could be assets that you've inherited from family, farm income, things of that nature. Another one that I highly recommend that you consider is, again, additional assets that you may have along the way which are not serving you. For example, you might have land, you might have some toys that you've acquired, maybe a summer home. But as you get into those retirement years, realistically, you look at it and go, I don't really see me using it that much. It's sitting there, it's growing mold. It might be that selling that asset, liquidating it, using it in a different way to create money to either supplement and delay pulling the trigger, or to supplement the fact that you are going to pull the trigger early on Social Security, taking a lesser amount of money, right? But that you're okay with that because you have these additional assets you can liquidate and use a different way. I think that's a prudent decision to look at. Do I want to hang on to that stamp collection I got from Grandpa? Do I want to hang on to that summer cabin that I only used twice in the last 5 years? Or can some of those assets, should some of those assets be liquidated and go toward your financial plan as your retirement? And then, of course, you want to factor in, as we said earlier, the average life expectancy for men and women in the United States, which, by the way, for men in the USA is 77. I was stunned to read that, but I checked several resources, and that's about right. And as I clip into 60 and I read that, I'm like, wow, that's on average 17 years left. That's not all that long, 17 years. And by the way, it's 81 for women. So ladies, you have a little bit a longer shot on average. And again, these are just averages. But, the law of large numbers gives actuaries a very good picture of, in all probability, when men drop dead in the United States and when women do. And that number, oddly enough, is pretty sound. So those are things that I will certainly consider. those are things that I talk with people in a professional environment about considering, and those are things that you too may want to consider as you're trending toward retirement. But I want to talk with you about the financial impact. This individual, this 59-year-old individual that we're discussing, if he draws Social Security at age 62 and lives to the expected age of 77, he will receive, even though it's a lower amount of money, it is over a longer period of time, he will draw from Social Security $334,260. If he waits to age 67 and pulls the trigger, it's going to have a higher dollar amount each month. But again, in light of mortality, right, probability, in all probability, the average male is going to croak at 77. His payout from Social Security is going to be $337,680. Not that much more than if he pulled it earlier, even though it is a lesser amount monthly. This same individual, if he waits to age 70, the total benefits that he receives, even though the monthly amount is significantly higher than at age 62 or 67, he's going to receive $303,744 if he dies at the average age of males in the United States, which is 77. So again, by delaying that number, that individual is getting more. But the risk is that if you don't have the longevity in your corner, in all probability, it is going to cost you in the long run, delaying it to age 70. So obviously, you get the formula that I'm using. You could run the math. If you're a female, you could do it yourself. She's age 81. You can log in. You could figure out the numbers for a female. I can do the same, but for time, I'm not going to. I just want to kind of teach you the fundamentals of the principles. So while choices such as these are very personal and frankly somewhat of a guess or very subjective, hopefully you can see several practical ways where you can look at the numbers, run the numbers, and make a decision which may best suit your needs in light of some of the factors that we have discussed. Now, in closing, a couple of retirement strategies that I talk about with people in addition. And by the way, with Social Security, one of the benefits to my career and my life in general is I've had the good fortune of traveling a lot and meeting a lot of people in different scenarios. My particular company, West Penn Life and Health, we specialize in life, health, Medicare, and annuity and retirement planning. And as a result, I've talked with a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people over 30 some years in various walks of life, many of which are 65 and older and in that retirement mode. And I got to tell you, I've seen some people that are happy and they're living the dream. They're doing it right, and kudos to them. And I've also seen some people that it's actually very sad, and not that far from where I live in Canonsburg. I mean, within 100-mile radius of Canonsburg, you've got Greene County, you've got certain areas in West Virginia where I've been in homes helping people with Medicare or various things that the poverty level in some cases is horrible. And usually people who are not living the dream, right? Usually a common mistake that I see for those individuals is they, unfortunately, are relying completely on Social Security to live. And let me just throw this out there. Social Security was never designed to be your entire retirement strategy, okay? It was never retired to be that. So if you're young and you're not saving money now, can I tell you, take a dime of every dollar you make and pay yourself. Put it away, okay? Pay your bills on time, do that, but do all that with 90% of every dollar you make. Take one dime of every dollar you make, as long as you can, and put it away. I'm not talking about what investment strategy. Put it under the pillow. Put it in the cookie jar. But a dime of every dollar you make. Begin to save so that you're not relying on a government mechanism as your only source of retirement income. Especially when you log into Social Security, you're going to see some of the fine print And some of the fine print is that there's no guarantee in the future that Social Security is going to be able to pay out even 100% of what they are illustrating or estimating your benefits to be. Okay, things can change, right? And that has to do with workforce, people contributing versus people taking out. So whatever your retirement strategy is, hopefully it includes more than Social Security. So a couple of things. If you have a workplace retirement plan, here's another tip that I want to give you. Usually with a standard pension, when you leave a company with a standard pension or a traditional pension would be what? Unlike a 401k, which is a lump sum of money, a standard pension is when you pull the trigger on your pension, you're going to get X number of dollars per month for the rest of your life. If you're married, they're going to give you spousal retirement options, which means that it will reduce your monthly pension X number of dollars each month to provide a guaranteed income to your spouse should you predecease her. And very often, gentlemen, based on the statistics I just showed you, you are going to predecease your spouse, assuming that you're married to a female, right? And very often, not always, but very often, it seems the case that in the United States, the trend has been that females are a year or two younger, maybe, or more than the male himself, who is traditionally going to die earlier. So I say that to say this, that there are ways that some have benefited rather than taking the spousal survivorship option from that pension. What I have taught some people to do, and there are some tricks to this, some things you have to be cautious of, but there are ways I've seen people benefit by purchasing a life insurance policy. Rather than taking the survivor benefit option for the spouse, they buy a life insurance policy so that if or when they predecease their spouse, the lump sum money, which is paid out income tax free, by the way, is enough to create or generate a monthly income equal to or potentially greater for your spouse for the rest of her life. And it doesn't cost you as much monthly as your survivorship reduction benefit on your normal pension would. So that is something, we call that a pension maximization strategy. That's something you may want to look at if you're fortunate enough to have a career or a job where you have a traditional pension, monthly pension guaranteed for the rest of your life. Another thing that I'm asked often about is, Tom, what do we do with our 401k? And while I'm not a registered investment advisor, there are some things in life that you don't have to be to help people or to come to a good conclusion. And that is, the older you get, the less time you have. And while the stock market has traditionally, made money year after year after year, it traditionally grows, there is some instability in the stock market. And if you've lived long enough, you've seen some of the pros and some of the cons. But I've had more than one individual that has all of their eggs in one basket. And if the stock market goes down, that person, there are people that I know who have suffered tremendous harm, and they simply do not have the time left in life to overcome those losses. So one of the things that I caution people with a 401k is to really consider your risk tolerance, which is why I often challenge people to consider a safe money alternative, such as a fixed interest annuity. Several weeks ago, I interviewed a gentleman with ISDA Financial Life, Jim Lake. If you get a chance, you might look that up. But here's the beauty to a fixed interest annuity. Number one, they're very safe. Okay. Meaning what? Meaning, barring something catastrophic, a total economic collapse, you're not going to lose your money. Okay. You can't. And not only do they, guarantee the security of your principal. For example, with ISDA on the 5-year annuity, they guarantee you could never earn less than 1.75% interest compounded daily on your principal. And there's a probability you're going to earn much more than that. So fixed interest annuities are very safe. Number two, they offer a competitive interest rate. I spoke to several people today in the office who, one lady, a beautiful lady, called me from northern Ohio. Her and her husband lived in Japan for quite a few years. They moved back here. They've got a lot of money. They're fairly well to do, and she's had a lot of money in CDs and actually enjoyed the interest that money created, enjoyed the money that the interest on the CDs created. Well, she said to me today, these CDs aren't doing anything for me. It's really messed up my funny money. And she's looking at, using a safe money or a fixed interest annuity as a way to begin, putting her money back to work and enjoying some of that. Well, 401k, personal IRA, alternative to a CD, safe money annuities work. They provide safe and secure, a safe and secure investment opportunity or environment. They offer a competitive interest rate. They also provide you access to cash should you need it. And that is, an individual could enjoy their interest monthly after as little as 30 days. They can also access some of the principal with no penalty in as little as a 12-month waiting period. For example, one of the more popular interest-sensitive annuities that we deal with, you can access up to, but not to exceed 15% of your principal after only 12 months. So for example, on a $100,000 deposit, that gives you access up to $15,000 with no penalty during that 5-year lock-in period. And by the way, these safe money annuities have, some of them, a 2, 3, 5, or 8-year lock-in period, but they are a great way, one of many, but a great way and a safe way of rolling over that 401k into an individual IRA, individual retirement account, that can, again, give you safety of principal, your money is working for you, access to some of that money. And then, of course, many of these have triggers. Let's say, God forbid, that you have that money in there and you suffer a major medical event, a critical illness, heart attack, stroke, cancer. In some cases, you can access up to 50% of that money, no penalty, okay? Or God forbid, if my client or the consumer we're talking about should be confined to a nursing home, they can't feed, bathe, and dress themselves, whatever. Again, there are some very great opportunities to access up to, typically, but not to exceed 50% of their money. Two other factors to consider is fixed interest annuities allow you to name a beneficiary, guaranteeing that in the event of your untimely death, all the money in that account goes where you want it to be, goes to your loved one, bypasses probate, no hang-ups. There's no penalties, no surrender charges, anything in that case. And then finally, the other thing that's interesting about a fixed income or a fixed interest annuity is that at any time, not that you have to, but at any time, the consumer can convert that nest egg from something that behaves very similar to a CD, for example. They can convert that nest egg, which is called annuitizing it, to where it literally will create a monthly income just like a pension for the rest of your life, and or you can name a spousal survivorship option just like a pension from a corporate position, which would create a monthly income for you guaranteed the rest of your life. And should you predecease your wife or your husband, guarantee your spouse an income for the rest of theirs. So, some great tips and hopefully some ideas that'll get your, get the bubbles in your think tank going, or maybe get the bubbles out of your think tank. But at any rate, this is a little bit of some of my passion. And again, I'm certainly thinking more and more about this as I approach 62, 65, 67, 70, and begin to determine and make some of these decisions for myself. Again, my name's Tom Yakupin, the Tom Yakupin podcast, talking today a little bit about Social Security and some tips, techniques, ideas about living the life that you desire as you age into retirement. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now. Special thanks to West Penn Life and Health, one of our sponsors. You can find them online at westpennlife.com, specializing in affordable life, health, Medicare, and retirement solutions.